My name is David Carter, 44, an engineering designer from Asheville, North Carolina. 5 years ago, I married Monica, a determined woman with a soft voice and a careful smile, the kind that hides exhaustion behind grace. She was raising 2 teenagers on her own. Lily, 17 now, sharp-tongued and distant, and Evan, 15, restless, already carrying his father's smirk without realizing it. Their biological father, Brian, had moved to Texas years before I arrived, promising to stay involved, to call every Sunday, to fly out for birthdays. He sent gifts sometimes, shoes that didn't fit, video games they'd already outgrown. The boxes came with his name on them, and that name alone was enough to erase me for days. They'd gather around the package like it was holy, tearing it open, laughing, forgetting the man who paid the mortgage under their feet. When I married Monica, I didn't expect them to call me Dad. I didn't even want the word. I only wanted to be steady, to build a kind of silence that meant safety. Dinners on time, the roof fixed before it leaked, the car warmed before they woke for school. I believed in showing love the way a craftsman builds, piece by piece, quietly, without applause. In return, I thought I'd earn respect, maybe even trust. I was wrong. From the beginning, I could feel it, that invisible line running through the house. Everything north of it belonged to them, and I existed just south of belonging. Lily looked through me as though my presence blurred her memories of her real father. Evan measured everything I did against a man who wasn't even there to fail the comparison. At first, I told myself patience would bridge the distance, that if I kept showing up, paying the bills, driving them to practice, fixing what broke, they'd eventually see me. But patience can turn into invisibility when no one's looking. Monica called me good. That word. Small, safe, useless. "You're such a good man, David," she'd say after I mowed the lawn, after I paid for Lily's braces, after Evan crashed his bike and I stayed up till midnight replacing the chain. But her eyes drifted elsewhere when she said it. Like she was thanking me for a service rendered, not love given. There's a special kind of loneliness in being useful but not loved. You become the background hum that keeps everyone comfortable. The faucet that never leaks, the light that never flickers, the wallet that never empties. You're appreciated only by your absence. Sometimes I'd test the silence just to see if it noticed me. I'd skip dinner one night, come home late without calling. No one asked where I'd been. I'd find them already eating, the TV on, my chair pushed too far back from the table. A small thing, but small things accumulate until they start to sound like truth. Lily had her mother's eyes, but none of her warmth. Her sentences came trimmed short, designed to end conversations before they began. "Yeah. Fine. Whatever." She used her phone as armor, the glowing screen a wall between her and everything that reminded her of me. Evan, on the other hand, tested me in subtler ways. He'd wait until I spoke, then glance toward Monica as if seeking permission to listen. It wasn't rebellion. It was hierarchy, and I was never at the top. One night, after dinner, I overheard them laughing in the living room. My name came up, wrapped in amusement. "He tries too hard," Lily said. "He's like a teacher who doesn't get jokes." Evan laughed, that deep teenage laugh that carries no weight yet cuts anyway. "Yeah, Mom. Why'd you marry such a serious guy?" Monica laughed too, softly, briefly, but she laughed. She said something like, "Be nice to him." But her tone was gentle, playful, not protective. I stayed in the kitchen, hand resting on the faucet, listening to the sound of my own quietness filling the room. I wanted to believe that time would heal it, that they'd grow older and see me for what I was, the man who stayed, the man who showed up. But years have a cruel way of confirming what they began. Instead of healing, the silence hardened. Respect never arrived. Even when I tried to connect, it slipped away. Once, I helped Evan build a model bridge for his school project. He'd struggled with it for weeks, the glue drying wrong, the angles collapsing. I stayed up with him till nearly 1 a.m., sketching, measuring, explaining. The next day, his teacher praised the work. He came home proud, told Monica, "Mom, the teacher said I did great. Not we, just I." And Monica, smiling at him, didn't correct the story. That night, I stood in the garage looking at the leftover scraps of wood, the glue drying in its bottle. My hands still smelled like the effort he'd forgotten. On Sundays, I'd drive them all to church. Monica liked appearances, the image of a family aligned under faith. Lily would sit in the back seat, scrolling through her phone. Evan slept against the window. I drove in silence, the road stretching out like a sentence without punctuation. Afterward, Monica would talk to friends in the parking lot while the kids wandered off. I'd stand beside the car, keys in hand, invisible among conversations about vacations and youth programs. "That's Monica's husband," someone might whisper. "Not David. Not their father. Just Monica's husband." Invisibility has a weight. It presses down slowly, like snow on a roof. Light at first, then dangerous. You start moving carefully, afraid that one wrong step might collapse everything. You start smiling at things that hurt, nodding at disrespect as if agreeing with it. One evening, I found a photo tucked behind the refrigerator magnet. An old picture of Brian with the kids. They were on some beach, sunburned, holding melting ice cream cones. Lily was maybe 9, Evan 7. The caption on the back said, "Our best day ever." I turned it over, left it face down. The next morning it was upright again. Someone wanted it visible. I never mentioned it. What was there to say? That ghosts can still decorate a house? There were moments when Monica's silence felt like betrayal. Not loud betrayal. Not the kind that storms out and slams doors, but the quieter kind, where someone lets you drown slowly because the water looks calm. She'd watch me take the kids' disrespect in stride, then tell me later, "They don't mean it, David. They're just teenagers." I wanted to ask her if she ever planned to stop protecting their cruelty. But I didn't. I swallowed it like medicine, bitter and useless. Still, I stayed. Because that's what I do. I stay. I build. I endure. But endurance is not love. It's survival wearing a polite face. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit in the living room after everyone went to bed. The house would creak softly, the kind of sound that only exists when walls remember things you'd rather forget. I'd look at the photos on the mantle, the ones Monica kept from before we met. I was in only 2 of them, both from family vacations I'd paid for. In both, my smile looked practiced, like I was trying to fit into a frame already full. The truth is, I never wanted to replace their father. I only wanted to matter, to be part of something that didn't feel temporary. But every year since I moved in, I felt myself fading, not vanishing all at once, but eroding. A steady, quiet subtraction. Now, when I walk through the house, I can feel it breathing around me like it belongs to someone else. The walls hold memories that aren't mine. The laughter I hear isn't meant for me. The meals I cook are eaten without acknowledgement. And still, tomorrow morning, I'll wake up early. I'll make breakfast, drive Evan to school, pay another bill, fix another small thing that's broken. Because that's what the unseen man in the house does. He keeps everything working, even when the family stopped working long ago. Resentment doesn't explode. It seeps. It starts with a tone, a glance, a sentence left unfinished. Mine began on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day that tricks you into believing peace is possible. The house was still, the air thick with the smell of reheated coffee. Evan had forgotten his backpack again. Lily was late, as always. Monica moved through the kitchen with that soft efficiency she wore like armor. Everything felt painfully normal. Then it happened. A small, careless moment that would rewrite everything. Evan stood at the counter, scrolling through his phone, cereal bowl untouched. I told him gently, "You'll miss the bus." He didn't look up. "Brian would have driven me." A quiet sentence said with a smirk he probably learned from his father. The words landed like a needle in the heart. Small, sharp, impossible to ignore. I asked, "What did you say?" He shrugged. "Nothing." Lily, without looking up from her phone, added, "Dad wouldn't make a big deal out of it." Monica's silence arrived right on cue, as if she had rehearsed it. A small sigh, a turned back, a pretense of peace. That was the moment, the exact second when something inside me stopped bending. I didn't yell. I didn't slam my fist on the table. I just stared at them, These 3 people I had built a life around, and realized how thoroughly I'd been erased. 5 years of quiet labor reduced to a punchline about a man they barely remembered but somehow still worshipped. After they left, the house felt different. The air thinner. Even the walls seemed to lean away from me. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table I'd built myself, and stared at the empty cereal bowl. I could still hear his voice. Brian would have driven me. The words played on a loop all day. They followed me to work, humming beneath the noise of machinery and deadlines. By the time I drove home that evening, I knew something irreversible had begun. That night, Monica tried to talk. She stood in the doorway, her arms folded like she was bracing against a storm. "They didn't mean it," she said. "They did," I answered. "They're just kids, David." "No," I said quietly. "They're reflections." She frowned. "Reflections of what?" "Of what we've allowed." That shut her up. She turned away, pretending to check her phone, as if the right distraction could erase the truth. I didn't sleep that night. The ceiling above our bed glowed faintly with moonlight, and for the first time, it looked like distance itself had moved in between us. I realized I was married to someone whose silence was louder than my pain. The next morning, I didn't make breakfast. I didn't drive Evan to school. I didn't fix the wobbly drawer Monica had asked about. I simply stopped moving in ways they'd come to expect. The absence startled them more than anger ever could. By the 3rd day, Lily asked if I was okay. Her tone wasn't concern. It was curiosity, like she'd found a new species in her own house. I said, "I'm fine." That was the last conversation we had for a week. I stopped explaining myself, stopped seeking their approval. Every act of withdrawal felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. I learned that silence could be a language, too. Sharper than any accusation, cleaner than confrontation. But even silence has an echo. By the 2nd week, Monica noticed the finances. She stood by the counter, flipping through unopened mail. "You didn't pay the credit card." "I know." Her head snapped up. "Why?" "Because I don't owe for what doesn't see me." She blinked, unsure if I was joking. "David, what are you saying?" I met her eyes. "I'm saying I'm done funding the illusion." She looked terrified, but not because of money, because she understood that this wasn't about bills anymore. It was about balance. About years of invisible sacrifice finally collecting interest. Later that night, I sat in the living room, the house dark except for the soft blue light from the aquarium. I could hear them laughing upstairs, the kind of laughter that's easy when someone else is carrying the weight. I wondered if they even noticed how quiet the world would become when I stopped speaking. Patience had always been my shield. I wore it proudly, convinced it made me strong. But patience without reciprocity is just endurance dressed as virtue. It keeps you standing long enough for others to climb on your back. A few days later, Lily asked if I could sign a check for her senior trip. I looked at the paper, then at her. "Ask your father." Her jaw tightened. "He doesn't have it." "I know," I said. "But that's who you said you wanted." She froze. I handed the form back and walked away. That was the first time I'd ever seen her speechless. Monica confronted me after. "You're being cruel." "No," I said. "I'm being accurate." She shook her head. "You're punishing them." "I'm freeing them," I said. "They've spent years worshipping a ghost. Let's see if they enjoy living with one." She didn't speak to me for 2 days after that. The silence was almost comforting. I began to imagine what it would feel like to disappear completely, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. To leave them with their myths and their expectations, and let the structure I'd built slowly collapse under its own entitlement. Every family has a breaking point. Ours just looked polite on the surface. On the 5th morning, I found a picture of Brian taped to the refrigerator. One of those old prints they kept tucked in drawers. He was smiling, tan, alive. Underneath, in Lily's handwriting, "See you soon, Dad." I took it down, not in anger, but in surrender. Folded it once, slipped it into a drawer beside the unpaid bills, and whispered, "Maybe you should." That night, I wrote an email to Brian. Short, factual, detached. I told him his kids wanted contact, that it was time he stepped up. I included their numbers, their birthdays, their schools. I hit send and felt nothing. No triumph, no rage, just quiet relief. Then I waited. Within a week, he replied. Polite, distant, grateful that I'd been holding things down. Said he'd visit in summer, maybe. I forwarded his message to Monica and the kids without comment. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed early. It was the first peaceful sleep I'd had in months. When I woke, something felt lighter. The house buzzed with confusion. Monica pacing, Lily on the phone, Evan whispering. They didn't know what to do with a man who'd stopped trying. That evening, over dinner, Evan asked, "So are you mad at us?" I said, "No. I'm done being the only one who's not." They looked at me like they were seeing a stranger. Maybe they were. Because the truth was simple. I'd stopped being patient. I'd stopped begging for gratitude. I'd stopped fighting for a place in a story that was never mine to begin with. And though none of them could see it yet, a quiet decision had already been made. The next chapter of our family would begin without illusion, without my money, without my voice, without my invisible endurance holding everything together. Patience had finally run out, and what remained was something sharper. Clarity. I didn't slam a door. I opened a window. Quietly, I let the air change. First, I wrote to Brian. I kept it spare, like a blueprint. The measurements of his children's need, the coordinates of their lives. Birthdays, schedules, cell numbers, the school's office line. I told him I'd been the scaffolding long enough. It was time for the original architect to try the weight of his own design. He replied 2 days later. Polite, evasive. Summer sounded promising. Work was complicated. Life had moved fast. He thanked me for holding the fort. I forwarded the message to Monica, to Lily, to Evan. Then I turned off my phone and went for a walk in the cold. Feeling like a man who had finally lowered a heavy beam he'd been holding above his head for years. I didn't announce my withdrawal. I enacted it. I stopped predicting weather and fixing moods. I stopped greasing the hinges of conversations that always swung shut on my face. I let the house report on what I'd always carried. The first morning told the truth. No one was ready. Evan missed the bus, blaming a foggy alarm he used to ask me to check. Lily left late with a half-finished essay she once expected me to proof. Monica stared at a dead coffee machine I used to clean on Sundays. The ordinary broke first, the small cogs and quiet rituals that make a family look easy. Lunches went missing. Car rides misfired. The printer swallowed an application and spit it out in hieroglyphs. A leaking faucet tapped its way through dinner like a metronome that refused mercy. No one asked me to fix it. Pride held their tongues. Habit had trained their silence. They ate to the rhythm of annoyance they could have ended with one sentence. "David, can you help?" Monica tried to bridge us. "It's just a rough week," she said, her voice lining the wound with gauze. "We'll adjust." But adjustment is physics. You need force and direction. We had neither. On Friday, Lily called from the school parking lot, voice thin with weather. "The car won't start." I said, "I used to carry a spare battery pack in the trunk. Is it still there?" "I don't know," I said. I took my tools out. Silence. Not anger. Not yet. The sound of a map folding in on itself. That weekend, Evan burned pancakes into black coins that smoked the house awake. He opened windows he'd never opened, fanned the alarm with a school folder, swore at the SK asterisk let, laughed, then swore again. I watched from the hall. He saw me. He didn't ask. He tried again. The second batch came out edible and shaped like states. He set 2 on a plate for his sister and shouted, "These are the Dakotas. Progress, not truce." Monica's patience broke before mine did. She cornered me at the sink. "I know what you're doing," she said quietly, so the kids wouldn't hear. "What am I doing?" "Making a point." "No," I said. "I'm removing the point from my chest." She shut her eyes. I could tell she wanted to say sorry, but apologies have deadlines. Let enough time pass and they curdle into strategy. I kept stepping back. Not a sprint. A steady retreat. I let the myth of dad will handle it meet the country called he won't. The terrain was rough at first. Late fees, missed rides, cold dinners, but you learn a new land by walking it. On Tuesday, a letter arrived from Texas. The return address floated above Brian Carter, like a kite over a field it never landed in. Lily held the envelope like it might sing. She read it in her room with the door shut. When she came out, her eyes were drowning without tears. She passed me in the hall, not touching the wall for balance like she usually did. The letter lay face down on her bed until the cat knocked it under. I found it later, creased, smelling faintly of cologne and airport. Can't make spring. Summer looks better. Proud of you. Always. Signed with a postscript that felt like a shrug. Evan went quiet after that. Not the sulking quiet of teenagers, but the mechanical quiet of a machine that's conserving battery. He started washing his own clothes. He put a sticky note on the washing machine that said, "Detergent CAP is broken. Turn slow." He learned the sound of the house the way I had learned it years ago. The clink that means the pilot light coughed. The rattle that means the vent is lonely. The soft knock in the downstairs bathroom that's never been the pipes. I watched him map what I'd been for him. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like history finally writing itself in his own hand. Monica lasted 2 more letters. Brian's second postponement came with too many exclamation points. The third was a group text with a blurry selfie of him at a lake. A child I didn't recognize on his shoulders. Captioned, "Family time. Miss you guys." Lily set her phone down like it bit her. Evan muttered cool, and walked out to the porch, sat on the steps, and stared at nothing until night took it away. That's when the first note slid under my door. Lined paper. Blue ink. Lily's handwriting careful like a truce flag. I shouldn't have said those things. I know you do a lot. I don't know how to say it without sounding fake. I'm not choosing him. I'm just wishing he was who he says he is. I'm sorry. Not love. Not even forgiveness. But the sound of ice cracking in spring if you stand very still. Evan's letter came 2 days later. A folded square with fingerprints of grease. I didn't think about the stuff you do because I never had to. That's the problem, right? I never had to. I get it now. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a ride on Thursday because the bus makes me late and coach is sick of me being late. Honesty. It wears plain clothes. I gave him the ride. I didn't give him a lecture. The car was quiet, the good kind. He said thanks when he got out, then pretended he hadn't said it. I didn't return to old rhythms. I didn't restore the budget to its previous fantasy. I picked what fit inside fairness and left the rest to reality. I paid the mortgage. I stocked the staples. I kept the heat. I let every luxury find its rightful sponsor. Some vanished. Some got moved to Texas with a forwarding address that never signed. On Sunday, Monica knocked on my study door. She came in with her wedding ring spinning nervously on her finger. "I should have defended you," she said, sitting on the edge of the desk like it might buck her off. "Not because you pay, because you stay. I was afraid of losing them, so I lost you in front of them." She looked older saying it. Truer. "I don't want a confession," I said. "I want a plan. Therapy," she said. "Rules that aren't negotiable. Names for things we pretend are accidents." She took a breath that seemed to lift the whole floor. "And I want to stand next to you when the first rule is broken." "Which rule?" I asked. "Respect is rent," she said. "If you want to live here, you pay it." We began small. Family night with phones in a bowl. Chores assigned like contracts, not favors. A budget taped inside the pantry door. A ledger that showed what the house costs and who lifts which corner. It wasn't punishment. It was physics. Weight shared stops buckling floors. I cooked breakfast the next Saturday, first time in weeks. Pancakes, bacon, coffee. The kitchen smelled like the beginning of a promise. I put 2 brown paper bags on the table, each labeled in black marker, "To Texas." They were light, mostly air, a joke with a blade inside. No one laughed. Lily touched one bag like it might move. Evan picked his up, felt the hollowness, and set it down again. "Are you serious?" Lily asked. "No," I said. "I'm honest." No one opened them. No one threw them out either. They sat on the shelf for a month, a reminder that fantasy doesn't pack well. When summer finally arrived, Brian didn't. He sent a photo of a barbecue under a sky that didn't belong to us. I didn't forward it. I didn't need to. The kids had stopped checking their phones for miracles. The house changed its pitch. Mornings got earlier, quieter. Evan asked me to look at his science project without the caveat of apology. Lily asked about colleges in states Brian hadn't visited. Monica sat beside me on the couch without bracing. The faucet still tapped sometimes. Habit is a hard drummer. But now someone would stand, cross the room, and turn it off. One night, after dishes and homework and the practical chores of repair, Lily lingered in the doorway of my study. "Do you hate us?" she asked. "No," I said. "I hated disappearing." She nodded, eyes glossy but proud. "I see you," she said, and left before I could ruin it with words. I didn't celebrate. I didn't trust the weather. But I believed in the barometer, behavior shifting toward pressure, not away from it. That's all I wanted all along. Not parade, not title. Just a gravity that matched the weight I carried. We were not healed. We were learning. We were not one. We were closer. And in the slow recalibration, I understood the truth I should have started with. Love is not inherited. It is proven. And proof takes practice. So I kept my distance where distance was honest. I stepped closer where closeness was earned. I fed the house heat and left the myth outside to starve. And at the end of one long day that didn't require me to vanish, I washed the last glass, set it upside down to dry, and finally allowed myself a question I'd been afraid to ask for 5 years. If they chose reality now, could I choose forgiveness later? I didn't answer. I just turned out the kitchen light and let the house breathe without me for once. Not because I was absent, but because I was finally seen. Morning light finds every flaw. The scratches on the table, the faint watermarks on the counter, the 2 paper bags still sitting on the shelf where we left them months ago. To Texas, written in fading marker. The house no longer hums with resentment. It hums with work. Ordinary work. Evan rinses dishes without being asked. Lily checks the trash before school. Monica folds laundry in silence that feels earned, not forced. I watch them all move through the space like survivors learning to breathe again. It's strange how absence can teach more than presence ever did. Since I stepped back, the air here has become heavier but cleaner. Every sound carries meaning now. The slam of a door, the scrape of a chair, the quiet apologies that appear where laughter used to hide guilt. I don't fill the gaps anymore. I let them echo until someone else answers. Most of the time, they do. Evan is 16 now. Taller than me, shoulders starting to square. He still avoids eye contact when emotion threatens to show. But sometimes I catch him glancing toward me before asking a question. "Do you think I could fix the mower myself? How do I balance a tire?" Simple things, but I hear what's underneath. "Teach me." I always do. I show him once and hand him the wrench. He finishes the job, proud in the quiet way I recognize from my own reflection. Lily's change came slower, more deliberate. She speaks like someone learning a language she once mocked. One night, she stood in the doorway, college brochures in hand. "Can you look at these with me?" Her tone carried no sarcasm, no test. Just uncertainty. I sat beside her, tracing tuition numbers, campus maps, small futures printed on glossy paper. When she laughed at something I said, a real laugh, not the defensive one, I realized it had been years since I'd heard that sound aimed toward me. Monica and I have beg***n therapy. Every Thursday evening, we sit in an office that smells faintly of citrus and old books while a woman named Dr. Heller asks us to translate the past into verbs. She tells us our marriage survived because silence, though cruel, is still a form of communication. I don't entirely agree, but I listen. She asks Monica why she stayed quiet. Monica says she thought defending me meant choosing sides, and she was tired of battles. I tell her I didn't want defense. I wanted witness. For the first time, she understands the difference. We drive home afterward without music. Sometimes she reaches across the gearshift, her fingers brushing mine. A small apology in skin and warmth. I take it, not as forgiveness but as recognition. The kids still talk to Brian occasionally. His texts arrive like weather updates. Light, harmless, easily ignored. Proud of you. Maybe visit soon. They don't believe him anymore. I don't comment. They learned what distance means. They don't need a sermon about it. In early autumn, Lily organizes a family dinner. Her idea, not Monica's. She plans the menu, sets the table, burns the bread. We eat anyway. The conversation is halting but honest. When she jokes that I'm basically the reason this house still stands, Evan adds, literally. They both laugh. Monica catches my eye over the candles, her smile tired but real. For once, no ghosts join us at the table. Later that night, I stand on the porch watching the lights inside flicker off one by one. The air smells like rain and cut grass. I think about all the versions of myself that have lived under this roof. The fixer, the provider, the invisible man, the ghost with a wallet. I wonder if this one, the quieter, slower man who no longer needs to be needed, might finally be the right version. Evan steps outside, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. He hands me one without a word. We sit. The street is empty except for the sound of cicadas winding down. After a while he says, Mom told me you almost left. I did. I admit. Why didn't you? Because leaving teaches nothing. Staying teaches cost. He nods, turning that over like a stone in his hand. I get it now. Do you? I want to ask, but I don't. Understanding isn't something you claim. It's something you live. When the first chill of winter arrives, the house feels smaller, cozier. We decorate for the holidays together, an awkward choreography of compromise. Lily hangs lights crooked. Evan corrects her. Monica plays the same record Brian used to like, then changes it halfway through. None of us mention him. That too is progress. Christmas morning, I find a small envelope under the tree with my name on it. Inside, a photograph. The 4 of us on the back porch, taken without my noticing. I'm fixing the railing. They're behind me, watching. On the back, Lily has written in small letters, "Thanks for staying." Evan added, "Even when we didn't." I don't cry, but something inside me unclenches, like a bolt finally loosening after years of pressure. I realize then that forgiveness isn't an announcement. It's maintenance. You tighten what still holds, replace what rusted, and hope the structure lasts another season. Monica joins me later with coffee. They meant it, she says. I know. Do you forgive me? I don't need to, I answer. You stayed. We sit there for a long time watching the snow start to fall, each flake landing on the porch rail I rebuilt 3 times. The world looks cleaner when it's covered in something temporary. Months pass. Lily gets accepted to a college 2 hours away. Evan starts applying for part-time work. Monica laughs more. The paper bags labeled to Texas still sit untouched on the shelf. I consider throwing them out, but some symbols deserve to stay as warnings. One evening, as the sun burns low, Lily calls me Dad by accident. The word hangs there, fragile as glass. She catches herself, blushes, corrects it to David. I tell her not to. The name doesn't hurt anymore. Feels earned, not borrowed. Later, alone, I walk through the quiet house and realize something unexpected. I no longer need their apologies. The house has learned my rhythm. Every creak, every sigh, every small repair still waiting is proof that I'm part of it. Not the scaffolding, not the ghost, just the man who stayed and kept it upright until everyone else learned how. I pour a drink, sit at the kitchen table, and look at the empty doorway where their laughter used to stop. Now it travels freely through the rooms, touches the corners I once filled with silence. Sounds different, lighter, honest, imperfect. I think of the years spent trying to earn love with effort, the years spent watching gratitude rot into expectation. I think of the night I almost packed a single bag and left. And I think of this moment, the quiet reward that came only after the breaking. The moral is simple, brutal, and clean. Love that costs nothing is worth exactly that. But love that survives debt, anger, and truth, that love, though scarred, endures. So I raise my glass to no one in particular and whisper into the still air. To those who leave, may they learn. To those who stay, may they see. The glass clinks softly against the table. The house answers with silence, the good kind, the kind that finally feels like home.